The night started like any other in our quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Denver. The air was crisp, the moonlight soft against the roof of our house, and inside everything seemed calm, at least on the surface. My name is Rebecca Wallace, and this is the story of the night my son tested the ultimate limit, and how everything I thought I knew about loyalty and love shattered in a matter of hours. My husband Marcus had been away on a business trip for the past 4 days. He worked in corporate sales and traveled often. Our marriage had its ups and downs over the years, but we made it work for the sake of our family, and especially for our only son, Aaron. Aaron was 21, home for the summer break from college. He'd grown into a tall, broad-shouldered young man with Marcus' intensity and my stubbornness. We had always been close, maybe even unusually close. I knew he'd had a hard time adjusting when Marcus and I had our rough patches in some ways. Aaron tried to step into the emotional gaps when Marcus pulled away. I never encouraged it, but I never pushed him away either. I suppose part of me just needed someone who would listen, and Aaron was always there, attentive, kind, mature beyond his years. That night, I was cleaning up after dinner. Aaron had cooked pasta and garlic bread, and we'd opened a bottle of wine. Maybe not typical for a mother and son, but we had these rare evenings where it felt nice to talk. As adults, we sat at the table longer than usual, laughing, sharing stories from the past, talking about college, about dreams. Then somehow the conversation drifted into more personal territory. He asked if I was happy, truly happy with Marcus. It caught me off guard. I paused, glass in hand, and looked at him. His eyes were steady, too steady. He wasn't just asking, he wanted to know something deeper. I answered truthfully, saying I didn't really know anymore. It felt like I was admitting a secret I had hidden from myself. We moved to the living room, still talking. I sat on the couch, and Aaron joined me, bringing another glass of wine for each of us. It was late, but neither of us seemed ready to end the night. The television was on, playing some old romantic drama in the background. I remember feeling a strange tension in the air. When I didn't want to name, he asked more questions about love, about loyalty, about how people know when they've truly found the right person. I didn't know where he was going with it, but I answered honestly. I told him that sometimes people settle, sometimes they stay because of duty or fear or habit. His expression darkened a little, and then he said something I'll never forget. What if someone really sees you, like completely sees you, and accepts you? Would you choose that even if it broke all the rules? The silence after that question was heavy. I didn't know what to say. I felt exposed, confused, like he could see the cracks I tried so hard to hide. I stood up, muttering that it was late and I should go to bed. But as I turned to leave, he caught my hand, not forcefully, just enough to make me stop. I know you're lonely, Mom, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've seen it, I felt it, and I would never hurt you. I just want you to know that. I pulled my hand away gently and went upstairs. My heart was racing, and I couldn't understand why. I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, unsure of what I was feeling. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps. He was outside my room. I could hear his breath through the door. I said, trying to keep my voice calm. You should go to bed. There was a long pause before I heard him whisper, okay. Then he walked away. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, tears in my eyes. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, replaying every moment, every look, every word. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of myself, of how vulnerable I had let myself become, of the emotions I had buried for years suddenly bubbling to the surface. The next morning, he was quiet. He made coffee, avoided eye contact, and said he was going out for the day. I nodded, thankful for the space I needed to think. What had just happened between us was not an act of infidelity in the physical sense. but something emotional had crossed a line. I felt responsible for it, for being too open, for letting my guard down, for allowing my emotional wounds to spill over into something inappropriate. I had to remind myself that I was his mother, not someone searching for validation or affection from a younger man, even if that man happened to be my own son. That afternoon, Marcus called. He said his meeting had ended early and he'd be home. By dinner, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew I needed to talk to someone outside the house, outside the situation. I called my sister Stephanie and asked if I could come over. She could tell something was off and said yes immediately. Sitting in her kitchen, I told her everything, not in graphic detail, but enough that she understood the seriousness of what had happened. She didn't judge me. Instead, she reached for my hand and said, "You need boundaries, Becca. You've been emotionally isolated for too long. And Aaron picked up on that. He needs clarity just as much as you do." That night when Marcus came home, I greeted him with a smile and a hug. I didn't tell him anything. I didn't know how, but I made a decision. I sat down with Aaron the next day in the same living room where things had taken a turn. I told him that I loved him, that I always would, but that some things cannot be confused, not even in moments of vulnerability. He looked ashamed, nodding, and said he understood. He apologized, not just for what he'd said, but for putting me in that position. He said he had been struggling with his own loneliness, watching me suffer in silence, and just wanted to help to fill a void. But he saw now how wrong that was. I believed him. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. We created more space between us emotionally and physically. Marcus noticed a change in me too. I began speaking up more, reconnecting with old friends, even starting a part-time job at the local library. Slowly, I started rediscovering myself. Marcus and I began couples therapy, something we'd put off for years. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. I told him how alone I had felt, and he listened, really listened, for the first time in years. And Aaron, he returned to college that fall with a more serious demeanor. He started seeing a therapist too on his own, and even thanked me later for not reacting with anger or shame. The night my son tested the ultimate limit wasn't about physical betrayal. It was about emotional boundaries, about vulnerability in the wrong place, about the dangers of loneliness left unspoken. It was a wake-up call for all of us. Infidelity isn't always about crossing the line with someone outside the family. Sometimes it's about letting emotions drift too close to the edge, forgetting who we are and what roles we must uphold. I learned that night just how fragile things can be when love is missing and silence grows louder than words. But I also learned something else, that healing begins with truth, and boundaries are a form of love.